And here we are.
All right, awesome. Well, welcome to AV Geeks, everyone. Not at the Hunt Library currently. I'm Virginia Ferris, and this is our 11th semester of this series, partnering NC State University folks with Raleigh's AV Geeks to discuss vintage educational and classroom films. Skip Elsheimer, founder of AV Geeks, is an NC State alum. He has been, for the last few decades, collecting film made throughout the last century, mostly 16 millimeter educational training and other sorts of how-to movies. He does an amazing job sharing them with the world, and he currently houses over 27,000 such films at the AV Geeks archive here in Raleigh, and shares them as stock footage for films and exhibits, as research material, and during public events like this one. Tonight's theme is sex education, and we are very excited to welcome our guest, Matthew Champagne. Matthew is an experienced community organizer, award-winning theater director, and an enthusiastic advocate for public history. Currently enrolled as a PhD student in NC State's public history program, Matthew's research focuses on the history of attitudes toward gender identities and erotic desires, and how sharing individuals' stories with the general public can affect the ongoing historical record. So while over 200 of AV Geeks compilations are available for checkout while the libraries are open, they're not open right now. Instead, you can visit avgeeks.com or search for AV Geeks in YouTube or at archive.org. Our next show is in 2 weeks on June 12th and features Dr. Marcia Gordon discussing films about being a girl. So check us out, same time, same channel. And I will now hand things over to Skip to kick us off.
Thank you very much, Virginia. So, sex films. This is a great topic. I was just talking to Matthew. He picked a Lulu of a topic. I have quite a few sex ed films, and he picked some great ones that we haven't shown yet. So what we're going to do is I'll give a brief introduction to what we're going to watch in context of when it was shown and why it was shown. And then we'll have Matthew kind of follow up and talk about the film and what resonates with him and what he wants to talk about that. And we have 3 films tonight. But actually, Matthew, say hello just so people can see your face.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Champagne. Nice to be with you all.
Nice. Okay, so this first film that you picked was Hygiene for Men, and this is a Navy training film, and was shown to new recruits and to people that were in the Navy, and trying to deal not only with the hygiene of potentially catching a venereal disease or getting sick because of smoking or because of drinking or because of drugs, but also some of the behavioral stuff associated with it. And Matthew, I'm sure you'll talk more about this. Coincidentally, in this film, there was an actor, Richard Hurd, who I think he plays a chaplain. He actually just passed away this week. He was in his 90s, but he's a character actor. You'll recognize him. So let's go ahead and watch Hygiene for Men. And we've excerpted it because it's 30 minutes long, but we're going to get to the meat of it, and we're going to start off in a strip club. So here we go.
It's easy for young people to get lost in this jungle that surrounds all of us. But, Bill, you have to recognize that it's all a big sell. Life isn't like that. And deep inside, son, you know. Now, look, it's quite normal to question how you want to respond to all this and what kind of life you want for yourself. All young men do.
Yeah. But most of them haven't gotten themselves in a bind like I have.
No, but they could. They have the same things working inside of them just as strong as those inside of you. Only most of them have learned to control it better than you have.
Believe it or not, Chaplain, this was the first time I ever had a girl.
Well, it only takes once.
But it just doesn't seem fair. I mean, everyone else is messing around.
Everyone? Out having a great big orgy?
Well, yeah. Just listen to the guys in the barracks talk.
Big mouths are the last ones to believe.
Yeah. But all I know is, when I go and try and find out what it's like, well, look what happens. The first time, can you beat that?
So have you learned anything?
Yeah. But I didn't want to get Mary pregnant. But what's a guy supposed to do for sex? Well, if he doesn't get it with a girl he likes, either he goes out and looks for a pickup or a prostitute or just something like...
Like masturbate?
Yeah.
Well, that's not the answer. You know it. Masturbation can't hurt you physically or make you insane or anything like that. It's just not what I'd call a completely satisfactory sexual experience.
But what's a guy supposed to do?
Look, there's no one answer. There's no one style of behavior that'll suit everyone. But before you decide, get all the facts. Right now, you're in the prime of your life. You're seeking independence from your parents. You're physically and sexually mature. But you're not ready for marriage. You have your Navy service to think of and perhaps more education later on. A career to plan for. At the same time, there are always sexual and other influences that need to be controlled. There are lots of things to help you control them. You can pitch in and do especially good work in your job. You can take part in sports and other physical activities. You can develop whatever creative talents or interests you might have. And you can enjoy girls without going all the way. Now, will it be activities like these that help build your self-respect? Or will it be ones that tend to degrade you? The decision is yours. You can let yourself drink too much, or ruin your lungs, or get yourself hooked on drugs, or let your natural feelings about sex develop unnaturally, or be turned to women who will give you satisfaction for a price. You can do all those things if you're willing to pay the price of possible damage to your health or to your own self-respect. Here's where a physical danger enters the picture. VD. Whores and pickups are easy to come by and can just as easily infect you and leave you with a different set of problems. Unless thoroughly treated, VD can cause serious damage to your body. It can make a simple act like urinating an excruciating experience, and unless completely controlled, can eventually lead to sterility, or even crippling, blindness, heart disease, insanity. And you can pass it on to another girl. The girl you marry, for instance, and give her the same problem, but worse, because it's harder to find and cure.
You and the doctor sure make a good case for playing it cool, Chaplain.
There's an even stronger case, Bill, and you've made it yourself with Mary.
Yeah, but I don't like to think about it.
You're going to have to think about it. It's bad enough that your own future is at stake, but look what you've done to her life. Can you imagine what she must be going through?
But, Mother, I'm sure Bill will marry me if I ask him to.
Oh, that's all we need is someone like that for a son-in-law.
Is marriage what you really want, Mary? What about your plans to finish school?
The only thing is, I'm not sure if he really loves me.
Loves you? How could he love you? Only had 3 dates with you. 3 days. Oh, brother.
Love really takes getting to know one another, honey.
You can say that again.
And you and Bill just haven't had that chance. It may come in time, but marriage is no place to experiment.
Don't you know that half the teenage marriages end up in divorce? And you want to know why? Because you kids get out there and start fooling around, and you end up having to get married. And it's wrong from the start. I don't know what's gotten into these kids today. I wish I could...
You have to decide, honey. Your father and I can only help you with it.
What do you want me to do?
Well, I don't see how you can have it here.
Your father has a point, Mary. And don't you think it would be less embarrassing for you? I've asked around and I found a place that can help us. We'll take you there just as soon as the baby starts to show. And you can stay there until it's born.
I don't want to go to a home for unwed mothers.
But honey, they take care of everything. They even see that the baby's put up for adoption, and you never even have to see it if you don't want to.
Oh, Mother, I'm so ashamed.
It's usually very lonely for the girls in a home like this, Bill. Awfully lonely.
Your name is Wendy? Where are you from?
From a little town about 100 miles from here.
When do you expect your baby?
In about 3 months.
Does anybody know?
Nobody knows.
Not even the baby's father? Why haven't you told him?
I try, but I just can't.
Do you care for him? Does he care for you? Then why are you afraid to tell him?
I don't want to make him have to marry me because now I'm pregnant. I just didn't know who to turn to.
Well, maybe we can help you. Let me tell you about this place. This is a home.
They do everything to help the girls adjust to their predicament, restore their self-respect, to keep them busy learning new skills, acquiring new interests, gaining new insights of themselves. But it's not like home. It's not like living with a husband you love, sharing the joy of the new life developing inside you. The place of love is regret. The place of hope, heartache. But if you want to know about real loneliness and heartache and despair, Bill, you have to see the children who have been brought into this world illegitimately. Children hungry for love and attention, living daily with a longing that someone from somewhere will love them and take them from here into a home with love in it. Can you picture your child here?
Good Lord.
You can marry her.
I don't want to get married, Chaplain. Well, I'm not ready to get married. And if I don't, and Mary decides to keep the baby, can they make me support both her and the baby?
Well, yes. At least the child. Until it's 21.
Oh, boy, whichever way I turn, it'll sure mess up my plans for more schooling. You know, Chaplain, I kind of like Mary. With a little more time, I might have gotten serious.
Well, what you did when you dated her was pretty serious.
But she was wearing this bikini, and I just couldn't help myself.
Bill, every act that you perform, everything that you do, accumulates one upon another to make you what you are, to make you what you will be. Now, you can choose between actions that you're proud of and ones that you're not. And the same holds true with dating. Now, self-control is just as important in dating as it is with everything else. It's even more important because somebody else's life is involved. Of course, when you date, you should never forget that as a male, you have a basically aggressive instinct. You're built to pursue the female. And the question is, how far do you go? Should you let go to the animal urge for conquest? To go all the way? Or do you recognize that you have to control things before they get to the point where they can't be stopped? And there is that point. You have to realize, too, that girls also have sex drives. A girl may want to be attracted to you, but she may not realize how much the way she dresses and behaves excites you sexually. She's not as easily aroused, and she usually doesn't think of sex in terms of a one-night stand. She thinks in terms of a longer relationship, with tenderness, affection, and love. If you feed her emotional needs without any serious intent, you can take advantage of her. But you can't do it without feeling a sense of guilt, because you've deceived her. Really, dating is an important and a very natural relationship between unmarried men and women, basic to the human biological urge to look for a mate. It's the best way to meet different kinds of girls, and to evaluate them as possible mates and let them evaluate you. Now, dating different girls is just the first step. Later on, you court one girl, then marriage and children, and raising them in a family environment. This is the road that can lead you to an emotional and physical relationship that can endure for years and years. It's what most men strive for. But it can all be shattered in one single action. In one single moment.
I thought you told me you loved me.
You know I do.
What's the matter then? It's just you really don't, huh?
Bill, I do. I really do.
Then show me.
Such a great film.
Obviously a lot to unpack, yes.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if there was any targeted questions you wanted to get at. But yeah, so obviously I surveyed through the AV Geeks collections of films related to sex education and was really drawn to this one because of what it says, but also because of what it does not say. So obviously, this is a sort of anti-premarital sex video that was, yes, as you said, shown to Army or Navy recruits. But I think it's also just very emblematic of a lot of the sex education that would have been given to young men during the late 1960s, early 1970s, whether enlisting in the Navy or not. And obviously, it is a message of control. It is entirely about controlling the fact that they are sexually mature, like physically, but yet aren't ready for the responsibilities that can come from being sexually mature, such as a pregnancy. Now, obviously, the commander or the Billy's commanding officer gives him a lot of very odd advice on how to control his sexual instincts. Masturbation is, of course, immediately not considered a viable option. even though now, of course, numerous research, even the CDC, shows that masturbation is in fact a very good preventative, not only for pregnancy, but also for venereal diseases, while also still allowing you to be sexually intimate with someone else even. So it's a movie all about control of these sexual urges, investing that energy instead into your work or your career or your education, your creative arts, sports. But it's that last minute that is, I think, the most telling of sex education, even up to this day, where we do not have very good conversations around consent. I mean, we see Billy and his girlfriend under this blanket. Presumably, this is the night when they conceived a child. And the conversation between them is completely normalized. It is not the subject of the video, it is the conclusion. And it's a conversation where he is coercing her into having sex. And we see that this child, this baby, fetus, was actually conceived under coercion. I mean, she's clearly not willing. He says the classic, "I thought you loved me," to which she responds, "Well, I do." And he says, "Well, what's the problem then?" And then she starts a statement. He finishes it for her. And it's, again, just it's not the topic of the video. The video is all about controlling sexual urges. And it's all about her. She even says herself that she feels ashamed for having become pregnant. But there is no allocution of shame to Billy and his inappropriate behavior for how the child was actually conceived. So like I said, I think it speaks a lot to sex education, not only what is said, but also in what is not really elaborated.
That's pretty great, and it's fascinating that the film, this next film that you picked, addresses consent and talks about some of these issues that you were mentioning in this. I should say that his commanding officer was actually his chaplain. We cut that part out.
Okay.
Yeah, and so masturbation morally,
Absolutely.
And what's interesting is, so I've been loosely doing research over the years in hopes of doing a documentary about venereal disease films. And early on in the 1800s, venereal disease was rampant. And the people that were talking about it were the chaplains and the YMCA, and they were talking about morality and the hygiene. It's about the hygiene, the social hygiene, and about keeping morally clean, and coming up with these alternatives. And so this is very much related to the message has not changed. This came out, I think, in the late 60s, and 50 years prior in the 17, 18, 19, 20, it was the same thing. So this next film you wanted to see, Saying No, correct? That was the next one?
Yes, I tried to make some sort of through line and connection between the two.
So we're jumping straight to the 80s. And so this is... Go ahead.
Is this one not the 1970s?
No.
Oh, okay. Then it's early 80s. Okay.
Yeah. This is the 80s. I'm not sure of the remaining two which one came later, but this one is... I should say that this company that put this out actually were very progressive in messaging women regarding sexual health. So I have another film called The Ins and Outs of the Diaphragm that specifically talk to women about using a diaphragm for birth control and saying that you can't trust the man. You have to take control of your own birth control. And so this film is equally, even though it's crazy 80s, it has that look, it's a wonderfully progressive film that a lot of companies didn't actually do at the time. So let's watch Saying No.
What's the matter?
I just don't want to do that.
Well, didn't you have a good time tonight?
Yeah, but I think you better be going home now.
Well, come on. I thought this would be our special night.
I just think we've gone far enough.
Well, I thought you liked me.
Well, it's not that.
Well, no one will know except the two of us. I think you'd enjoy it.
I know.
Well, then why not?
I don't know. I just feel funny about it.
I didn't know you were that straight. If you don't like me, we don't have to go out
Don't
anymore,
be
you
like
know.
that. You know I like you.
Well, look, you get me all worked up, and then you say you don't want to do it. I don't like girls that play games.
I wasn't playing games. I just want you to go home now.
I didn't figure you for someone with a sexual hang-up.
I don't have a hang-up.
How do you know if you haven't had sex?
Well, I hadn't said I hadn't had sex.
Look, I didn't hold out on you. Do you know how much I spent tonight?
I know. I had a really wonderful time.
Yeah, well, you have a funny way of showing it.
I'm really sorry.
You know something? You're really beautiful. I mean, you turned me on the first time I saw you. I wasn't going to tell you this, but I think I'm in love with you.
Really?
Do you love me?
Yes, I do.
If you love me, you'll prove it. Just relax. I won't hurt you.
I don't think I should.
Back to the Art Warren Show, and our guest today, Dr. Joan Kaufman of the Louise Chester Teen Counseling Center in Oakdale. There's a caller on line 2. Go ahead, you're on the air with Dr. Joan Kaufman. What's your name, please?
This is Debbie, and I was wondering if you have any advice for girls who have trouble handling a situation, like when a guy really wants to do it, and you don't want to, but, well, in the end you do.
Yes, you mean that you have the intention of not having sex, but somehow you get talked into it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're doing something, Debbie, that you don't want to do, I would guess that on some level you haven't really clearly decided what it is that you do want. And this is more of a process of becoming aware of who you are and who you want to be and what's in your own best interest. See, the choices you make determine who you are. You decide what you'll eat, what you won't eat, what clothes you'll wear, whether or not you'll use drugs or alcohol, whether you'll smoke or not. And whether you know it or not, you do have some kind of ideal of what kind of person you'd like to be. Now, eventually, you face the decision of when to have intercourse. And this is a particularly difficult decision because it's one that's very personal and must be made on the basis of this self-knowledge that I'm talking about. Now, if you don't have a clear notion of what is right and wrong behavior for you right now, you can end up doing what you don't want to do. Keep this in mind. Unless you're a very unusual person, you're not deciding yes or no about sex. We can assume that you'll have as much sex as you want during your lifetime. You're just deciding when it's right to have sex. Now, there's no rush. You were born a sexual being, and you're going to be one until the day you die. And in each stage of your life, you'll have different needs relative to this very unique person that you are. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, the choice of when to begin to have intercourse is a difficult one, again, because of the risks involved. 1 out of 10 teenagers becomes pregnant. You probably know someone that's pregnant. And for a teenage girl that's pregnant, the choices suddenly become very few and very serious. I'm talking about abortion, adoption, dropping out of school, raising a child in your parents' home, raising a child on welfare, going into a teenage marriage. And the other risk you have to consider, of course, is the growing rate of VD among teenagers. There's gonorrhea, much of the time showing no symptoms in women. Herpes, I read this morning, it's called the leprosy of sexuality. These are things that are on the rise. These are very, very real threats. Now, this doesn't mean that all these things happen to all girls that have intercourse. You know that isn't true. But what you should know is that the risk is there for everyone, and especially for girls who aren't ready yet. And there are an awful lot of those girls. I see them in my office every morning. Some of these girls simply lack the techniques of how to say no, being assertive, you know, and making it stick. Others find themselves getting into a sexual relationship for the wrong reasons.
This is Art Warren, back again with Dr. Joan Kaufman, and I've got a question. Dr. Kaufman, really now, is everybody doing it, or is it just talk?
Well, yes and no. Among young teenagers, 14 to 17, that group, the majority really aren't doing it.
And how come you hear so much about it?
Well, because the pressure is to be sexually active, there's no doubt about that. But in fact, there are a lot of girls who've decided to postpone sex. They make up a kind of silent majority. They have their reasons, but you don't hear about them because it isn't the cool thing to do, you know.
Because of the peer pressure and all that.
Yeah, right. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, I really love my boyfriend, and sometimes we'll be together, and you know, we get kind of worked up, you know. But we've talked it over, and I really feel like I'm too young to deal with having sex. And I just want to wait for a while, and so does he.
I wasn't ready for it the first time. It was messy, and it hurt. And I didn't feel very good about myself afterwards.
Well, I was brought up to believe that it's wrong to have sex before you're married. I mean, I don't lay it on anybody else, but that's how I feel about it.
I have this girlfriend who got herpes, and I don't want to risk that, so I'm going to wait.
I don't like the side effects of birth control, and I sure don't want to get pregnant. That's nowhere.
Well, I want to get married and have a lot of kids, and I don't want to get involved with somebody now and mess that up.
But haven't women always been saying no? Isn't that the age-old issue in the battle of the sexes?
Well, sure, I guess you could generalize and say that men have historically tried to pressure women into having sex. But I think the big difference now is that other girls pressure her too. Girls who have had intercourse feel a lot better when all their friends have too. It's only natural. So today a girl is getting it from all angles.
And what about the media? There's a lot of innuendo in advertising.
No one ever says no in an ad or commercial. But in real life, you have to learn to say no if you're going to respect yourself. And, I mean, it's always easier to just go along.
And that's where assertiveness comes in. Holding fast to what you want.
Being clear, yeah, and firm, and not being afraid or embarrassed to repeat what it is that you want. Or in this case, what it is that you don't want.
Please don't.
What's the matter?
I just don't want to go any farther.
Well, didn't you have a good time tonight?
Well, I had a great time, but I don't want to go any farther.
Well, why not? I thought this would be our special night.
Well, I just think things are getting a little heavy. I don't want to make it with you.
Well, I thought you liked me.
I do like you. I just don't want to have sex.
No one would know except the two of us. I think you'd enjoy it.
I might. But I don't want to do it.
Why not?
I don't have to give you a reason. I just don't.
Well, I didn't know you were that straight. I mean, if you don't want to go out with me anymore, you don't have to.
I'm sorry you're mad. Because I really like you. I just don't want to go all the way.
Well, look, you get me all worked up, and then you say you don't want to do it. I don't like girls that play games.
I'm really sorry if that's what you think I did.
I didn't figure you for someone with a sexual hang-up.
How does mine not wanting to make it with you mean I have a sexual hang-up?
Well, you're not turned on, are you?
I am turned on. And that's why I want to stop before we go any farther.
Yeah, well, it's not that easy for guys, you know what I mean? I mean, once we get turned on, we got to go all the way.
I know that's not true. And I'm not going to do it.
Look, I didn't hold out on you. Do you know how much I spent tonight?
I know you spent a lot, and I had a wonderful time. But I'm not going to make it with you.
know something? You're really beautiful. I mean, you turned me on the first time I saw you. I wasn't going to tell you this, but I think I'm in love with you.
I think a lot of you too. But I think if you loved me, you respect my feelings.
What makes you think I don't respect you?
Because if you did, you wouldn't pressure me into going all the way when I don't want to.
Okay, so you don't want to make it. Woman's got a mind all her own. I'll say that for you. But don't say I don't respect you, because I do. What do you got to eat?
We're back on the air with Dr. Joan Coughlin of the Louise Chester Teen Counseling Center. Dr. Kaufman, I know that some girls can stay in control of an emotional situation, but not everyone has that ability.
Yes, they do, Art. Every girl has her own particular way of being assertive. The secret is to know what you want and then to stick to it.
Maybe you didn't understand me. I said no way.
I don't believe in sex before marriage. And if that's your only interest in me, you better forget it.
I just don't feel that way about you, and I'm not going to do it.
We have a caller on line 1. Go ahead, you're on the air with Dr. Kaufman.
Hi, my name is Sue. I was fairly loose when I started high school, and now I get the feeling that guys just take me out for one reason, you know. It really bums me out. Is it possible to change that? I mean, right now, you know, they expect it.
Sue, this is one of the most common problems I hear. No, just because you've had sex, I don't care how many times, you don't have to keep having it. There are hundreds of ways to show a person that you care about them without having sex. But remember, if that's all you're offering, that's all that's going to be taken. You can change your way of relating to boys at any time. You always have the last say in what you do with your body.
Joan, didn't you say you were going to give us an address where our listeners could send for a questionnaire that would help them find out if they were ready for sex?
Well, no, actually, I don't have enough for that, but I'll go one better. If it's all right with you and we have time, I'd like to read the questions now over the air and let your listeners answer them right now.
That's great, Dr. Kaufman. Okay, if you're a teenage girl, put down what you're doing, sit back in your chair, and take this 1-minute quiz. You don't have to answer out loud.
How will I feel about myself if I have sex?
All right, Matthew, that was a great film. Why did you pick this one?
Absolutely. Lots of food for fodder. There's like several reasons I picked I tried to pick all these films sort of keeping each of them in mind, picking ones that were somewhat entertaining, whether for good reasons or not, films that were sort of reflective of the historic period in which they were created, and ones that did have that altogether sort of have a real through line. The beginning of this film very much picks up where our first film ended. To refresh, in the first film, we see Billy and his girlfriend under a blanket on the beach, him very much trying to coerce her into having sex with him. This film picks up young man, young woman on a couch, and the young man very much trying almost every line in the book in order to coerce his girlfriend into having sex with him, when she very clearly is saying she does not want to. He says things like, "Didn't you have a good time tonight? Do you know how much I paid for dinner? I didn't know you were such a prude." All these really BS ways of coercing someone into having sex. And then, of course, this young woman calls up this fictitious sort of radio interview with Dr. Joan Coughlin, who is answering her questions about sort of how to beat off these unwanted advances. And while Dr. Coughlin does give some very good advice, some advice that has stood the test of time, it's a bunch of other euphemisms on how to say no, how to do so more aggressively. There's also some sort of problematic tendencies in Dr. Coughlin's approach. I mean, the first thing she does is sort of speculate or suggest that the young woman who is calling in doesn't really have full conviction of what she is trying to get across. So yes, while trying to inspire confidence in what she's trying to do is noble, I think to sort of blame this young woman for having sex when she didn't want to isn't really the greatest first way to kick this off, but I also think it speaks to a more fundamental problem of this film, and that is it's geared specifically for girls who are pressuring other girls into having sex. And while that problem does need to be addressed, like the first film was geared entirely towards men, the second film was geared entirely towards women. And we're not seeing sexual partners. I don't want to be so heteronormative, especially as a gay person myself, but we're not seeing in sex education generally the two partners being brought in together for a conversation regarding their sexual health. And I think that really gets to the core issue of sex education as it has been taught historically in this country and elsewhere.
Nice. Yeah, we were talking during the film, and I was talking about how in the 70s and 80s, you would have in middle school, the girls would go into one room and learn about their periods and menstruation. The boys would go into another room and learn about wet dreams, and just kind of hang out until the girls were done. And so they would both learn different things. And I've been talking to teachers and students, and nowadays they all are in the same room and they all learn the same thing. And that seems like that's a step in the right direction, at least.
No, absolutely. Because as we were saying, like I had my sex education about 15 years ago, early 2000s, and we were still separated. They still very much gave this sort of very binary model that, yes, was definitely more reflective of the film of the 1960s or films of the 70s and early 80s than of the one we're about to see.
Yeah, so this last film is Condoms, A Responsible Option. And this is a great film. I like it personally because it has assembly line footage of condoms, which I am a big fan of assembly line footage. But also it plays out kind of humorously the whole what are the risks of sexual having sex, and then how condoms can help reduce that risk, both for transmission of disease and pregnancy, and negotiate some of the issues that come up when people are talking about condoms or not wanting to use condoms. So let's watch that.
Hi. No, I can't talk right now. Any minute. Oh yeah, he's great. Much nicer than Jimmy. No, not yet, but tonight's a definite possibility. Well, because I feel I'm ready. And we both like one another a lot. And we're both starting to feel pretty serious. Here he is. Call you tomorrow. Hi.
Hi.
Come on in.
You look really nice.
Oh, I'm not expecting anyone. Excuse me. Jimmy!
Hiya, Sue. How you been? Long time, huh? Guess what? I got
Who's
this
he? It's Jimmy. We used to go out, but I didn't invite him. I haven't seen him for over a year. Now what? Hi, Donnie.
Vern? I thought you moved to Kansas or Nebraska or someplace.
Fun. How are ya? Listen, I meant to call you after that girl I told you I was engaged to. Out of the blue, she calls me. She tells me she changes her mind.
Hey, I heard there's a party going on here. Not too much.
I got some beer in my car.
Perhaps you're wondering why I've gathered you all here this evening.
You could say that.
You're here to make a very important point.
Like what? Two's company and 46 is a crowd?
That's one way to put it. Here's another. If you and Sue decide to become physically intimate with each other, that decision may expose you to sexually transmitted diseases carried by a lot of people you don't even know.
What?
You take the risk of exposing yourself to contact with all of Don's previous partners, and their previous partners as well. Likewise, Don risks exposing himself to contact with your previous partners, and with their previous partners too. In other words, when you accept a new sexual partner, you run the risk of exposing yourself to all the sexually transmitted diseases your partner has been exposed to before you even came along.
You know, this is a little embarrassing.
It's also extremely dangerous, because one of the sexually transmitted diseases we're talking about is acquired immune deficiency syndrome, a condition which destroys your body's ability to fight off disease, including cancer. It's a merciless killer, most often referred to as AIDS.
AIDS?
According to the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, 1 out of 5 Americans has a sexually transmitted disease at any one time. These diseases include syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, AIDS, or any of 30 different conditions. Millions of Americans have been exposed to AIDS and now carry the virus in their bodies. Most of these people don't even know they're infected.
What are you saying? We're all gonna die of AIDS?
Far from it. AIDS can be avoided. Just like other sexually transmitted diseases, you can protect yourself.
Go on.
You can decide not to be sexually active.
Easier said than done.
Which will give you complete protection against becoming infected through any sexual contact. When you do accept a new sexual partner, you can ask whether he or she has been tested for AIDS, and if so, how recently. A knowledge of your partner's history and test results can improve your margin of safety.
And that's it? Don't have sex? And if you do, ask for a resume and medical records first?
No, there's more. If you are sexually active, condoms provide a powerful line of defense against sexually transmitted diseases, including AIDS.
Excuse me, but this is boy talk, isn't it? I mean, they don't take the pill for us, so why should we have to worry about condoms for them?
This is why. Men are more likely to give AIDS to women than women are to give it to men. Why take responsibility for using condoms? Just one reason: to protect your health and your life.
What if you never bought condoms before?
You never bought a condom before?
Well, I tried to once, but... I just didn't know what kind to get.
There are many types to choose from. Some are made of latex rubber and some of animal intestines. Some have ridges and other features to increase sexual stimulation. Also, they vary in price. When you begin to use condoms, you might start with a basic lubricated type with or without a reservoir tip. After that, you may want to try other types to see which kind pleases you and your partner most. And remember, one size fits all.
But even if you know what you're looking for, it's still embarrassing to go in and buy them.
You're right. It's a problem that must be overcome. And here are some easy ways to do it. Select a store that displays condoms on open racks, rather than on or behind the counter. Or you might buy your condoms from one of the vending machines that seem to be popping up in more and more locations. Or visit a local clinic or family planning center, where personnel are especially sensitive to clients' feelings. Or simply buy them through the mail.
Okay, we get the point. I got mine right here. I mean, some of us knew the story before we even got here. So can we just break this little meeting up and get on with our business?
If you knew the whole story, you would not carry your condom in your wallet, or the glove compartment of your new car, or any warm place. The best way to protect their effectiveness is to keep them in a cool, dry place. Condoms are manufactured and tested to ensure compliance with strict government standards. When properly stored, they remain effective for 2 to 3 years with excellent reliability. In fact, the main problems associated with condoms are failure to use them at all and failure to use them correctly.
Correctly? How complicated can it be?
Not very, but here are 8 key points that can make all the difference. A condom should be used whenever you have vaginal, oral, or anal sex, and it should be in place before the penis touches any opening of your partner's body. Open the packet gently. Take care not to tear the condom with your fingernails. Don't attempt to test it by stretching or blowing it up. Every condom you buy has been pre-tested. Testing it yourself may only damage the condom. A lubricant may help to further reduce the very small possibility of your condom breaking. Whether or not your condom is already lubricated, you can use an additional water-based lubricant, such as KY jelly, as well. Baby oil or Vaseline may weaken the latex rubber of which many condoms are made, so use only the appropriate lubrication. Spermicides are products designed to kill sperm and so avoid pregnancy. Used with condoms, spermicides offer valuable added protection against sexually transmitted diseases. Be sure to put the condom on correctly. As you begin to roll the condom onto the penis, press the air out of the reservoir tip if the condom has one. If the condom does not have a reservoir tip, leave about ½ an inch of it free to catch the semen. Smooth the surface to eliminate air bubbles. Roll the condom down to the base without stopping until the condom is completely in place. When the penis is withdrawn, the condom should be held at the base of the penis to make sure it is not left behind. Never use a condom more than once. The contents of the used condom should not come into contact with any part of either partner's body. Although the chances of a condom breaking are very small, they do exist. Should this ever happen, additional spermicide should be applied directly into the vagina. If spermicide is not available, douching with warm water is recommended. Whenever you accept a new sexual partner, or whenever you cannot be absolutely certain about your partner's history of exposure, proper use of condoms offers important protection against AIDS and other sexually transmitted diseases. While not absolute, this protection is highly effective. It gives sexually active men and women their best chance of remaining safe.
Well, looks like the party's over.
So what do you want to do tonight?
Why don't we think it over?
Come on, Fern. I'm not using one of those. What's the point? I know you're on the pill.
Can you tell me how many girls you've slept with in the last couple of years?
Sure, more or less.
And do you know where they've been?
Well, how can I know that?
Ever heard of AIDS?
Yeah, but... Oh.
Get the message?
Uh-huh.
That's why we're using the condom.
All right, we're back.
So again, another quite interesting film, but also the one that I think people watching can actually take the most away from. This film is by far the most modern, not only just in and there's many ways we can tell that. One of which is by the information that is being conveyed. As we saw in the first film, geared primarily towards men. The second film geared primarily towards young women. This third film finally brings sexual partners together to have a conversation with their sexual health and well-being. The abnormality of that is particularly poignant in the moment where one of the young women, or one of the women in the film says, "Condoms? Like, isn't that boy talk?" And this sort of omnipresent narrator reminds everyone that, well, no, this is a conversation that is one that should be had between consenting adults to ensure that when two people or more than two people do decide to be sexually intimate, that they're doing it responsibly and with everyone's safety in mind. But what I really love about this film too is that it gets beyond just mere health and safety, and it also finally brings up the conversation of sexual pleasure as a part of sex education. And I think this is something that we really tend to ignore. It's not touched upon too much, but the fact that the narrator even goes into the fact that some condoms are ribbed, some condoms have like pre-lubrication, and going into these different types of condoms and lubricants to sort of enhance sexual experience is something that, again, is sort of pushing the boundaries of sex education. Because it's one that, as we saw from the first film, is usually so much about control and abstinence, but this last film really pushes back against the abstinence, it pushes back against the fear, and it allows adults to engage in sex responsibly and with as much pleasure as possible. And that's why I think the 8 steps are really important, because I just remember from my own sex education, I was asked if I knew what condoms were. I said yes. That was the end of it. I did not know that opening a package with your teeth could threaten the structural integrity of the condom. I didn't know different types of lubricants could also do that. I didn't know that condoms came in different like flavored lubricants or ribbed or not. There was a lot that I didn't know. Obviously, in 10 short minutes, this film can't touch upon everything, but I think it touches upon a lot more than most films of that time and preceding it. So that was why I thought this was a pretty good one to wrap up our session with.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I have a film. It's very explicit. So there's there's footage of penises and diseased penises, and so we don't show that online. But it was made and shown to people in the military, men, and it shows how to use a condom. It says specifically what to do. It shows the whole process. It's amazing to see that. And that was in, I would say, the early 40s. So like just as we were getting into World War II. So that information was being distributed, but it was very specific to just men and specifically young men, and not in schools at all. Absolutely not.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm not in any way suggesting this information wasn't available. But if we look at even like how I mentioned earlier in our sort of sidebar, Dr. Jocelyn Elders, who was the Surgeon General under Bill Clinton, who made a comment at an AIDS conference that masturbation was a healthy alternative and healthy option for sexual intimacy with oneself or with others, to minimize risky sexual behavior. A comment for which she was forced to resign as the Surgeon General. And this is 1994.
Right.
This is not long ago in our history so yes, this information has been available for condoms, we have been around for almost 400, 500 years. Of course, not made in the same assembly line fashion as they were in this film. But so this idea of certain diseases being transmitted sexually and the prevention of that has been around for a long time. But how and when to educate people on this is still by no means standard. And I think that was actually one of the reasons I picked sex education as one of the topics, because I think it is still one that's so important because it does not happen equally. And really should.
Right, and what happens is it's like a pendulum that keeps going back and forth as far as like, oh no, we should have this honest dialogue about it. No, we shouldn't tell kids about sex at all. This back and forth. It's almost generational how that happens.
I know. They're going to learn about it some way.
Oh, they definitely will.
Yeah.
So, Matthew, we talked about it while everybody was watching a film, but tell me about what you are working on with your dissertation. It was really fascinating.
Oh, thank you. So I look at the history of the LGBTQ plus community, and particularly how historic same-sex couples are discussed at historic sites. I specifically look at couples who lived prior to the creation of positive and non-clinical language, basically couples who lived before LGBT, to see how museums talk about their relationships. Because obviously, we don't want to be historically inaccurate, but we also don't want to deny agency to same-sex couples who lived 100, 200, however many years ago, just because the language didn't exist for them to fully articulate their experiences. And even if it had, the environment that they lived in wasn't such where they could have articulated them as we do today. That's not to say LGBTQ plus people did not have fun in the past.
Right.
We very much know they did. We know that they learned how to navigate these worlds of that just look different than ours. So that's what my dissertation tries to address: is how do you balance it? You want to be historically accurate, but you also want to make museums safe environments for LGBTQ plus people to discuss their history and culture.
Excellent. Yasmin, are you there? No, Virginia, you're there. All right.
I am here. Yes. Yeah. So I think we are just about at our time. And I want to thank you both so much. If we were here gathered in person, we'd all be giving you a huge round of applause for a really fascinating discussion and great film selections tonight. So everybody just remember to visit avgeeks.com for more information and check out some of the DVD compilations when the library's physical spaces are open again. And we will see you at our next event on June 12th with Dr. Marsha Gordon for films about being a girl. Thanks again, Matthew and Skip, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all. I really appreciate this opportunity.
All right, everybody have a good weekend.